Making up your own seed starter mix as well as potting mix will save you a lot of money. Because they both use a lot of the same materials, you can keep the raw materials on hand and just make up what you need. In fact, you can take starter mix if you've got a little bit left over and turn that into a potting mix. It ain't hard. I'm gonna show you how to do it. Let's go. That may not look like it, but that is 4 cups of peat moss. You could also use coconut coir. To that 4 cups of peat moss, we're going to add 1 cup of vermiculite. There it is. To that, we're just going to mix it up. We're going to be using boiled water. The reason why you boil the water is really kind of twofold. It helps the peat moss absorb it, and secondly, put it in there to get rid of any parasites. If it's too wet, you can either add a little bit more vermiculite to it or a little bit more peat moss. Or you could just let it sit a few minutes and dry out a little bit more. It almost seems contrary to add the vermiculite to the seed starter mix, seeing as how it helps with nutrient retention. Seed starter has no nutritional value whatsoever, at least in most of them. You'll find a few folks that want to throw some nutrition in there, and that's okay. But what you're really going for is the moisture retention. The perlite does more for the aeration and drainage. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is keep the soil moist so that it'll keep the seed moist. Seeds need moisture for germination. We're starting off today with 8 cups of peat moss. To those 8 cups, we're going to add 1 cup perlite. We're also going to add 1 cup of vermiculite. We're just going to mix that up. It's easier to use your hand. If you're real particular about things, you can use a glove if you want. Make sure you get down in the corners. Just work it till it's a nice even mixture. We're adding some boiling water to it. I believe that's going to be enough. The real test will come once it's cooled down a little bit and I can grab some of it. With the hole outside for these dogs to go play in, they want to follow me around and just stand wherever I'm standing. I do love them though. If you can grab this and it forms a ball without dripping, you know, maybe, well, that may be a little bit. I got a couple drips out of it. It's ready to add the nutrition to it. Now, we got options. You could add some bone meal and some blood meal. You could add some fertilizer, or you could use worm castings, which is what we're going to do. I'm just going to throw a couple of handfuls in here. I don't know, maybe a cup, a little bit more. Then you mix it up again. Make sure you get into the corners if you want it really well mixed up. It's ready to plant in. We're going to transplant this. We got somebody we're going to give that to. The main thing is the proportions. We typically use a ratio of 3 or 4 to 1. Kind of depends on what we have on hand. Now that's 3 or 4 parts of the peat moss to the vermiculite or the perlite. And we typically put about 1 part of the plant food in there for them. Rather than using a cup, you could use a gallon. You could use shovels. It doesn't really matter as long as you keep the proportions the same, and truthfully, there's a lot of flexibility with that. A lot of folks will actually recommend more in the way of perlite or vermiculite. After watching this video, you know how to make your own seed starter mix as well as your own potting soil. Let's move on to the next step. If you'd like to know how to start your own seeds, check out the video and let's get started with that. I do love the smell of the rain and what it does for the plants. Ain't nothing cooler than to watch what it's done to your plants after a good rain.